You don't want to go out of business? Let's teach you how to hold the line.
Dude, Cameron, please.
No, that was...
You do not want to go out of business. What'd you say?
And I thought my life was over. Like, it was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Being partners with you exhausts me.
Welcome to the Premium Mindset, the weekly podcast where homegrown entrepreneurs and business owners Evan Ritchie and Cameron Bodden share the good, the bad, and the ugly of modern entrepreneurship and reveal what really happens behind the scenes of their personal and professional lives. As owners of two of America's fastest growing and most disruptive companies, Coconut Cleaning and Green Mango Pest Control. Stay tuned for real stories, struggles, insight, and advice from real entrepreneurs in real time.
Cameron, what time did I leave your house last night?
1:45.
Why?
Because we were holding the line.
Because we were holding the line. As things have gotten tough, you and I are left at the end of the day talking to each other saying, if we don't hold the line, implement these policies, procedures, hold people to a higher standard, we're going to be done. This week, it hasn't been the most difficult. It's just been a combination of stress and worries and a lot of planning and a lot of talking. You said something last night that stuck out to me, let's just maintain and call it a day. But you were joking. You're like, you know what? Let's not do any of this. Let's maintain and call it a day. But these are the moments at night where it's I want to post it and I want to talk about it, because when we talk to these other entrepreneurs and small business owners or people that want to go into business, and you really talk about that it factor, which is the long nights, the stress, the really, really hard conversations. You and I had an extremely difficult conversation with a top performing employee, and it led to his termination. And this is the stuff that sucks.
I asked that question though because I wanted us to get back into the mindset of, if we were starting out and we wanted to hire out this job task, how many hours would it take? How many people would we need? Because when anyone comes into the company and asks for advice, and they're a one-man show, what's their biggest fear?
I'm not too sure. They have a lot of fears, but
they're so scared to hire the technician.
Oh, that's right. Okay, yeah.
Everyone wants to get off the truck, but they don't want to get off the truck. Right. And I'm putting you on the spot here, but why don't they want to get off the truck, or why are they scared to get off the truck?
A few reasons. The ones we hear most often are they're never going to do a good enough job as me.
Okay.
They won't take care of the customer. They won't they're dumb, right? That's the comment I hear back. Or it's, I don't know if I'm going to be able to afford it.
Bingo. The afford one. When you hire someone out, you're putting that faith in them. As you get big, it just becomes natural. I don't even think about hiring a position out because there's so many different positions coming in. But when I said, hey, let's just cut everything and maintain, that's because I wanted us to get back into the mindset of, we just started. That same guy coming out and saying, hey, I want to start a business, but I'm so scared to hire that technician. How many stops does he need to do? What's his upsell have to be? How much revenue do I have to make in order to afford that guy? Because once you start to hire out one job that it should have taken one person, now you got 3 or 4 people doing it. And there's overlap everywhere. And I think that's what we're experiencing right now in business, is that, and it's management's fault for not putting them in the right areas, but there's overlap everywhere. And it's what are our expectations to get this result?
Man, we made decisions a year and a half ago that we didn't want to maintain and we wanted to grow. But I'd say 2023 and, the first month and week of 2024 have been the most difficult. When you choose and decide to get better, it will always be met with resistance, because the very person that was maintaining is not the caliber of person to necessarily handle the next level of growth. And so you put the cart before the horse and you start putting these goals out there of growth, and then you start putting the people in play to get those things, and then payroll issues, cash flow issues. And then you have redundancy in positions, and then you're firing people, but it's not necessarily a cultural thing because the business is failing. It's just oh my gosh, I was in survival mode 2 years ago when I hired this person, and there was a totally different apartment up. But now I'm seeing that I have 5 to 10 employees essentially overlapping and doing the same thing. And then I also simultaneously have other really phenomenal employees who feel like they're wearing too many hats and they need things offloaded from them to do their job, but they also want more money. And so it's like, if I hire someone to help take those things off your plate and you simultaneously want money, like all these little things have been the things that like have been keeping me up at night, because everyone's keeping tabs on everyone. And in my mind, I'm like, man, everyone's great. Everyone's friends. But then when it comes time to like someone has something happen outside of work, their, spouse gets in a car accident and they have to go buy another car. They're like, I need a raise. I know this person doesn't even work twice as hard as they work, twice as little as I do. Whatever I'm trying to say.
Less.
Twice as less, half as less. They work less than I do, and I want more money. And then it's like, oh, these people are subconsciously keeping tabs. And this is the stuff where I'm like, hey, very little sleep. What we did last night was extremely productive, but we could do that every night for the next year. And the better you get, the more problems show up. It's like going and get a full like health scan that people are doing these days. And then they're like, oh, now I got to go buy vitamin C pills, and I got to go buy this pill, and then I have to go start running, and then I also need to watch my blood pressure. It's like the more conscientious you get about improving and leveling up and being truly premium, the more you find out, like the more you add to your plate. And then you start saying, is all this stuff being added to my plate worth it? And then you're left with decisions where it's like, man, I just feel like I feel defeated at the end of a long day, because I feel like I helped 100 different areas at 10%. And then I'm going to go all in on a certain area tomorrow. And then you realize the more you go into that area and the more you uncover, just the more you suck. The more you're like, man, how did I let this happen? And then now I got to go explain to a manager with as much context as possible where this is coming from.
Right.
Because then they're like, wait, you're saying I need to get rid of 3 people? I feel like I need 2 more. Yeah. You're like, well, let me help you understand like where the attention needs to go. And if it's in the right direction, that attention in the right area might make up for the, might require the position you're saying. But for this fluff right here, I think we found out last night in marketing, we're spending 28% of the budget on like 65% of the leads. And so what are we do? You were like, what are we doing with the other $72,000, $115,000 per month? So we're spending, $45,000 for, almost
the top 6 lead sources.
Yes. And then 115 for fluff.
I say in business, there's a diminishing return in almost everything. And maybe even diving in as deep as we do in every department, there's a diminishing return. And that's why you always have to analyze. And I think that's one of our challenges right now is like, where's everyone's focus at and why? And get back to what we feel like is important that drives sales, that keeps the customer happy. And the other 80% that we're doing that you decided that you probably either through a communication that you had with us that you thought you heard, and maybe we even told you to do that. But at the end of the day, it's like, hey, what matters? Like what's driving the sales? What's driving customer, referrals? What's helping us move the needle? Let's focus back on that and just let those things go.
I think it was Andy Frisell and Ed Milet. And they're the first 2 entrepreneurs where they're like, BS, entrepreneurship is not for everyone. It's just not. Given the rate of failure for businesses, as well as the amount of businesses that don't fail or go out of business, but kind of just stay existing, like entrepreneurship is really only for 6 to 7% of the population. And then when I think about that, I'm like, oh, like I'm in that population. But then I'm like, there are so many other people. The perception is that they're just running so much better. You texted me before I got to your house. You said, we're too good to be this poor. And speaking of the businesses, and what that means, guys, is like when you're running a business and when you scale and you add another position, all that overhead, the salary, the desk that you have to buy that person, the computer, the potential health insurance, all that stuff starts chipping away at the perceived value of growth. And then you start realizing like, now I'm adding more people to manage. We need a bigger office. Employee appreciation, all these little things that you want to do. So like, I hope we do business together forever. But the one thing I will be forever grateful for is your instilling in me to hold the line and not settle on just being average. Like, you hate that word. You don't want your family to be average. You don't want your house to be average. You don't want your car to be average. You don't want your employees to be average. And you pay for those things. And I started joking last night about, like, hey, you have to put in the, the fact that someone needs to run this department because it's a rule of 7. It's like you're paying hundreds of thousands of dollars per year to hold the line. And not only to hold the line, but you're trying to tell people, this is where I want to go and I want you to come with me. But I just need you guys to take responsibility as well.
And I think holding line comes down to having systems and processes put into place that are clearly stated. And what we're learning now is and actually a trainer in place. That trainer could be one of the most important people in the organization, because if you have those standards in place, you have those systems, then people can carry out the vision. But if you get to a huge size, no matter whatever huge is to you, if you get to that size and you don't have the bottom guy that has the vision of the owner, you're gonna fail and you're gonna go crazy. And we're at that point a little bit right now, because we're not perfect on all of our manuals. We're not perfect on all of our systems. Our training program I'd rate it a 3 out of 10. And I think the people that are running the training, that's no knock on them. Like, I'm dissing myself here. It's the tools that I've provided them. It's the resources that I've provided them. And so in order to hold the line, your guy needs to understand, okay, what's my job in holding this line?
This is when your kid says, I clean my room, and then you go open their closet. But you want to go to dinner too. And so what they did, you open the closet, all the crap's in there, and you're just like, okay, but I still want to go to dinner. But then you're like, what am I teaching him? Just be ready for the truth, because the truth is going to hit you like a ton of bricks. And that is that you know nothing.
We would have found these things 6 months ago, a year ago, 2 years ago, if we were as good as we are today.
But we weren't.
I know, but we are today. And that's why we're able to identify these things.
And it sucks.
Yeah.
And we suck. Cameron, when you golf, when did you pick up golfing?
At a very young age.
How old?
12 or 13, probably.
Okay. What was your experience like the first time you swung a club in the backyard for fun, and then someone saying, keep your finger here, keep your elbow tucked, all these little rules. And it's then you go back onto the same driving range where you're like, I want to pick up golf. I have fun hitting balls. Right. And now you're thinking of all the rules that go to just being somewhat decent at it. Then it's this isn't as enjoyable. Mm-hmm. But then you follow the rules perfectly one time, and then you're like, I'll come back tomorrow. And that's business.
I'll come back tomorrow.
That's business. It's you get kicked in the pants from all these different rules, whether it's by people, whether it's by your own flaws and inefficiencies. And then you do something right, and someone stops by your office, you get a text message and say, I really appreciate the videos you're sending. And then you're like, I'll come back tomorrow. I'll do this again. And you keep showing up. But you have to be committed to the process of continual improvement. You just have to reshape your mind that I know what I'm going to uncover. It's going to be bad, and that's okay. The more that you seek improvement, whether it's through mentors, books, application of principles that you learn, the more you realize the things that you're not doing.
You know what I was thinking about the other day? I was at the Suns game, and I know you're not a huge sports guy, but in basketball, the top starter, so Devin Booker for the Phoenix Suns, right? He'll play almost sometimes the full first quarter and then sit out the first 5 minutes of the second quarter and then come back in and finish it. And then he'll get his break during halftime. He'll start the third quarter and then sit the first 5, and then they want him to close it. So it's geared all around the time that he takes off and his rest. But it's amazing to see that when he comes in or when he starts the game, most of the time they'll go up by 10 or 15 points. When he sits on the bench, the lead will get down to maybe 6 or 7 or a tie game. Then he comes back in and he pushes the ball. He leads the pace. And I was thinking about managers. There's a reason why a manager was promoted to that position, because at one time he was the Devin Booker. But too often our managers just sit back on the bench, basically just they're on the bench. They're not really doing anything. They might cheer the teammates on. They might help the coach in timeout, but he's chilling on the bench. we need managers. And what I'm learning now is that if you're a manager that's sitting out, that's cool. Like, you earned your spot to be that manager, but you need to get back in the game to make a difference.
I love that. And I feel like anytime like you go around to a certain area in a certain meeting, I know you're not teeing yourself up to say your D book of Green Mango, but
Well,
like I just wanted to make a point that it's more me as Devin Booker. No, but like we'll go to a meeting and then people are like, hey, I want this more, right? What happened in November? You went out to the West Valley, said, hey, I'm gonna try to be out here monthly. You didn't go in December. December was busy, closed the end of the year. Most business owners know like it's just stressful times. You want to hit your goals.
And we had our holiday party, man.
Holiday party, you
All
saw
the
the people.
I didn't keep my commitment.
Right? But what happened in January? I said, Cam, hey man, like I know you're busy. I'm just don't hurt the messenger. But people are pissed you didn't show up.
I know, that was hard to hear.
I know most people who quit and coast years before you have. And what I'm trying to say is like being partners with you exhausts me and fuels me to be better, because I genuinely know in my heart, like there's just certain levels that I'm just happy at.
Mm-hmm.
But like you come in, right, third quarter, and you're just like, you're happy with that 6-point lead? We should have a 20-point lead. Let's get there.
Mm-hmm.
But you do that in micro ways every day for every department. When I'm like, hey man, 7-week rotation. You're like, cool, cash flow issues, fix it. I'm like, oh gosh, dude. Like, okay, cash flow issues fixed. And you're like, I saw a vehicle dirty out there, man. Like they're not holding the line on the vehicles. I'm like, but that's you.
Well, I appreciate that.
I'm tired. I'm tired, and people don't have you.
But we talked about this too, and this is the thing that I told you before we started this. I'm like, hey, I'm keeping track of a list of unwritten expectations from a manager.
I'm not surprised,
because it's just things that don't make sense to me.
What's the one or two to give an example?
I'll get into them in a minute. I'm glad you asked, but
it's like, cool, Mickey. Hope you're listening. It's
no, like, but to your point is that if you are a business owner out there and you think because you work your butt off for 2 years, you can all of a sudden just move out of state, you can go on vacation for 4 months and not expect your business to suffer in some way, shape, or form, you're wrong. It will suffer. Whether that's 10%, 20%, I don't know.
Yeah.
But it will suffer. And that's the same thing as a manager. If you worked your butt off for 2 years to become that manager for that company, you did all these great things, and then you finally get the manager position and you take a deep breath and just say, oh, I'm here, I'm good. Like, you're wrong. You are hurting the company. And that's not just as an owner, that's as a business owner. And that's where I'm at too. And like, so what you're talking about with me, like I have my goals of where I want to get to, $50 million in revenue. And in order to get there, I can take a little break. I can sit out during halftime and catch up for 5 minutes. And then it's back on it. Like, I got to go. Like, I got to jump back in. I got to lead by example. And that's how we have to have managers in an organization. No matter you've hired your first person or your 30th manager, that's how you hold the line, is keeping those people fueled, making sure that they're leading by example with their team. One of my unwritten rule, and I've labeled this as like the mother's intuition. And like this, whatever reason, man, your mom just knows. She has that gut feeling. You've had a long day at school and you just walk in, you try and fake it because the last thing you want to do is talk to your mom about, how you got bullied that day. But you're walking up the stairs and you smile, hey mom, and she's like, come back down, like, what's up? She knows something's wrong. I don't think managers appreciate that power that has been given to them, that authority. When you become a manager, you get this sense of like just promptings, if you will. You are a manager for a reason, right? You know what to look for. I think a lot of managers like forget about those intuitions of, hey, like that just seems weird. And I want to encourage managers to act on those things. If you think something's wrong, chances are like something's wrong. Go look into it. So that's the first one. There's a couple.
Unwritten rule, be maternal.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we just talked about this, but it's step in and remind them why you're the manager. Because a lot of people like that. I love your story about the coconut girl. Like she said, You haven't been on the phones in a while. You don't, I can't close all 10 leads that come in. You're like, oh, I got like what'd you say, 30 minutes or 3 hours or something. You went and closed 10 out of 10 sales. Like you threw down, she'll never question if you're a
Never.
great salesman again,
Never.
ever. Like you need to come in and just kind of like remind them. What did Steven say? Like daddy time?
Yeah.
Like you have daddy
Yeah.
time. Remind them who daddy is once in a while. Like you
Yeah.
need to do that as a manager.
Yeah.
And know your numbers. Like you were hired for a department to secure that department. That department is its own company. If you have a good owner, that department should have KPIs and should have revenue targets or whatever it might be for routing or sales or technicians. They're going to have their KPIs, their key performance indicators. If you don't know those indicators as a manager, you're failing the guy that you work for. This is my struggle right now. I was talking to Mark about this, my life coach, 2 days ago. And I just said, hey, Mark, like I'm happy, but I'm not happy. There's places I want to go. And he just said, hey, Karen, remember that guy like 3 years ago when you're like, I just want the big house and I just want this property. And if I could just have that, and if I could get 30,000 accounts, like I'm like, that would be success. Like that would be awesome. Like, you remember that? I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, you're there now. So now you're talking about the next biggest helicopter. You're talking about the next, 50 million. Now you're at 30,000 customers. Now you want 40,000. You're doing 24 million. Now you want 50 million. It's that's good, but just remember, it's about the journey.
Yeah.
And I think as an entrepreneur, that's what you need to remember is it's okay to keep pushing. And this is what Mark made me do. And I'm only challenge you to do it because like, look back who you were a year ago, look back who you were 2 years ago. And it's probably someone that you can't even recognize.
I don't like even looking at that.
And that's what's cool is because we always need to stop, because if you're a great entrepreneur, you have that X factor of always wanting to push and be better, or else you would just be, an average guy, and that's okay. But if you're wanting to be a big time business owner and hit 5 million, 10 million, 15, 20, $100 million, like you're going to have a kind of a couple of screws loose to go and drive and wake up, go to bed at 2 a.m. and wake up for a 5:45 meeting like that. Like you're like, something's kind of off, but that's okay if you like it, but don't beat yourself up because there's always going to be problems. And I think that's what we're finding now is, hey, the better you get at recognizing situations and problems, and they're always going to be there. The more people you have, the more problems you're going to have. And that's okay, because look at the company that you were last year.
Right.
Look at where you were 2 years ago and where you're going. And as long as it's progression and you're not going backwards, like you should be okay with it and be grateful. And it's the same thing like we talked about, like that principle that everything works out, right? I would always write down whenever something big would happen. I started writing down as like a journal for me. Hey, this big event happened for me. The investor backed out in 2008 or 2018 for me. And I thought my life was over. Well, fast forward now 6 years later, it's like, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. It really was. It was a really hard lesson. I learned a lot, but it was the greatest thing ever. But at the moment, I literally thought my life was over.
Bottom line is, when you go to the doctor for the physical, you submit the blood tests, you go get the MRI, you go get, EKG, whatever you get. It's like, be ready for the results and what is going to be required of you to do it in the same things in business. And I wanted to close with a big shout out to Kathleen, because she blew my socks off this morning, our human resource manager. She said, Evan, I want you to start asking yourself about specific managers and just say, if everyone adopted the behavior of this person and attributes and impact, would the company be doing better or worse?
Oh, dang.
I was like, Kathleen, that's phenomenal.
Yeah.
She's like, well, I'm talking about you. I'm like, no, but she just said, every time you're like having a hard time about what to do with the manager, just say, if everyone practiced this behavior and everyone showed up like this person, would my company be better for it or worse? And at the end of the day, it starts with you as the individual. And that's why I say, like, I'm tired, but like, I look at you and I'm like, man, in spirituality, there's a principle and understanding that Christ suffered as much as he suffered so that he can know how to aid everyone in every circumstance and situation. And we by no means are anywhere near that, but there is a familiar territory of showing up tired and wanting to be better and wanting more, and having the ability to look to the person to your right and to your left and saying like, I know what you're going through, follow me, and I'm going to get you to the promised land, because that's what you have to do as an entrepreneur, and that's what you have to do as a business leader in the near future. And moving forward, the only way that business is going to thrive is you holding on to the line that everyone is here with me that probably wants the same thing that I do. And the difference between me and you is like, when you sit back down, like, I'm going to make you get up, and we're going to keep going.